assassination has been one of the methods that the RPF has always used.
Your book really give everyone the reason not to believe anything or everything Kagame says in RPF.
Yes. I completely agree with you, and I've written many articles about Kagame, Rwanda's membership of the Commonwealth, and how inappropriate it was that Chogum was staged in Kigali. You know, at the time they chose to stage that meeting in Kigali, we saw that the M23, which everyone has now acknowledged, especially the United Nations, is supported and armed and, you know, deployed on the orders of Kigali. The M23 was running rampage in eastern Congo, just 4 hours drive west of Kigali, and yet Chogum still took place. I mean, my own view, and I'm not inventing anything, is Rwanda should never have been invited to join the Commonwealth in the first place. There was a Commonwealth human rights group that wrote a damning report in 2009 examining Rwanda's claims to join the Commonwealth. As you know, Rwanda was never a British colony, so it's a very strange choice in the first place. But that, you know, the Commonwealth has a charter which expresses its values, and that Rwanda did not meet those criteria by any means and should therefore never have been invited. That NGO that issued that report was never listened to, and Rwanda was invited anyway. And now we see that Kagame is chairing the Commonwealth for a year. I mean, to my mind, I'm a British citizen, and the whole organisation has put its whole reputation in disrepute. I mean, no one can take this organisation seriously if you're going to ask Rwanda to chair it, and you're going to stage Chogum in Kigali. I think the same issues would apply to the Organisation for the Francophonie, which is like, you know, I'm sure they do express similar values, and if it's going to have an organisation that stands up for these values, and then you invite as your head, the director, someone who has got the track record of someone like Louise Mushikabo, I really wonder why these organisations even exist. And I think what it does is it creates a huge cynicism amongst anyone who follows Africa, journalists, analysts, and ordinary Africans. They look at these organisations and they think you're just a dictator's club. And the same thing, of course, applies to the African Union, which has often, you know, for many decades been seen as exactly that, a club for dictators to get together and congratulate each other on their own success. But, I mean, they don't win any respect in the community at large. So I think these choices are very poor ones, and they damage the institutions concerned.
Thank you very, very much. And then especially in Kigali regarding democracy, even when Paul Kagame picks his own opponent, he can even give him 30% of the vote. He always gets 99%. And Rwandans see that, but they can't express their views publicly because of fear of retribution. You just mentioned M23. M23 is another issue. The international community is going probably to regret in the future. I don't know when, but it is going to happen because of the record of human rights abuse, and it's backed by the Rwandan government. There is no ambiguity. Now, in the UN, the reports everywhere. So
yes. I mean, the UN has said this very clearly. The US has said it increasingly explicitly. If you look at the statements by Antony Blinken at the State Department, you know, and he's not only saying to Rwanda, you need to stop supporting the M23. He's been saying you need to get your troops out of Eastern Congo, your Rwandan troops. So the Americans are very clear on this fact. The French have even the French, have actually said we don't, that Rwanda should stop supporting the M23. So it's not like there's any secret about this anymore. But we seem to have the situation where the EU and countries like France are sending millions of dollars in aid to the victims of the M23 in eastern Congo. And at the same time, they continue to send support to to Rwanda. They give huge amounts of aid to Kagame and to Rwanda. And as we know, if you support a government with a massive package of aid, which you can't monitor, at the end of the day, you are also supporting their army and their military actions. So it's a completely disconnected, contradictory foreign policy on the part of France and the EU. At least the Americans are sort of being a bit more consistent. My country is also completely hypocritical on this front because we want to send people, asylum policy seekers to Rwanda. This bizarre deal has signed where the Rwandans say they will take these people. The most overpopulated African country is going to be taking extra refugees. So there's a really strange disconnect where I think people have signed up for a vision of Rwanda which has very little relationship to the reality, and they're not joining up the dots and realizing how contradictory their policies are.
Well, let's talk more about the refugees, actually, the CNN wrote an article a few months ago. The title of the article was they refer to that deal as a scheme, which it may have different meaning, but in the context it means it was something like fishy, but or illegal, something that has something illegal in it, but. The contradiction, it's not the fact that Rwanda is overpopulated and it's so poor. Of course, the UK will say that we're going to give them money to take care of them. But my issue is similar to the OEF and CHOGM. It is the human rights. These people that are being sent to Rwanda, they are the most vulnerable. They are fleeing, at least what we know from them, their statement, their stories. They are fleeing their home country because of human rights, fearing of human rights abuse. And now you're sending them to a country that has a very bad record of human rights. So how do they justify that?
Yeah, I think what they say here in the UK is that really what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a deterrent effect. And what that means is that they actually want to terrify the people who are coming to the UK, crossing the channel, and say to them, if you come here, we'll just send you to Rwanda, and what the human rights record is there. So there is, again, a contradiction where on the one hand we have the Minister, Suella Braverman, the Minister for the Interior, saying, this is a lovely place, look at these gorgeous houses, this beautiful housing estate, people here will be very happy in Kigali. And at the same time, they want people to be frightened because they want people not to come in the first place, people who are living in the jungle in Calais. So again, this is a contradiction. Either it's a beautiful place to settle, or it's a deterrent effect, but it can't be both. And government officials will say, well, there's meant to be a deterrent effect, wow. and Suella Braverman will say, oh, but it's a beautiful place to integrate. I think the reality, if we look at it, the real likelihood is that those people will simply not stay put. I would have thought firstly you will get people absconding, where they will have to be rounded up and detained here in the UK before they are deported by air to Rwanda. I think those people will make sure that they don't get on those flights. So it will turn them into illegals, which I suppose the government would say they already are. And then I think what will happen with people who are flown to Rwanda, I don't think they'll stay there very long. No. We saw a very similar scheme a couple of years ago with Israel, as you'll be well aware. And what I heard, and we saw interviews with people who were being flown to Israel, Eritreans, Ethiopians. They were being flown from Israel rather to Rwanda and Uganda, and then in Rwanda's case they would then be put in a truck, a little van, and driven to the border with Uganda, and then could do whatever they wanted, and no doubt ended up back at the jungle, in the Sinai back in Israel. in a couple of months' time. So it's a delaying tactic, and it's meant to impress the British public. It's a performance. It's not a real policy, I'm afraid.
Speaking on the statement by the Minister Braverman, she just returned from Kigali, and I do believe it was in the Guardian article where she confessed that she didn't know that in 2018 refugees were murdered, were killed by the police, the government security forces. But then I think she went on to say that was then. Has anything changed really, in your opinion?
Well, I haven't been there since 2018. I doubt it. My experience is that Rwanda's police force and its army are not used to using crowd control techniques, which is something that I just came back from Paris. There is a demonstration almost every day, it seems, in Paris, and the police know how to deal with crowds, and they don't shoot them. They don't open fire. They may arrest them or they disperse them. They may fire tear gas. They don't actually kill them. And I don't think that the Rwandan police or the Rwandan military has any idea how to deal with crowds, because they are never confronted with demonstrations. And this was a rare event in 2018 where a group of refugees who weren't getting enough to eat in one of the camps, Congolese, and they dared to stage a demonstration, and the police didn't know how to treat that. I don't think they'd ever been confronted with that, so they just opened fire. And I really doubt they've had any new training since then. And my understanding is that all the people who were regarded as having organised that unheard of demonstration ended up doing very long prison sentences. They're still in prison.
In prison. Yes.
The Congolese leaders, the community leaders involved. So there wasn't even any attempt to kind of repair the relationship with the Congolese refugee community. It was just a really hard hand, and this is what you tend to see with Rwanda, that there is there's the iron heel comes down when there's anything approaching civil society, a civil protest. So I would have thought the same thing might happen. Yeah,
it is the same. Nothing has changed, and we do have people in Rwanda that can tell you exactly that nothing has changed since 2018. Today, it's still the same. It might be even worse. But now let's. I want to conclude this English version of our discussion by going back to Congo. Congo, I read in this book. Of course, I do have the English version, and I do believe it was on page 54 of the book where you talked about Adolf Hitler's lies. It was a quote about lies that you may repeat a lie every day and then you end up being believed. So, and I think in the book also, I don't remember the page, but you mentioned that Rwanda, the security threat or the threat of safety or security is no longer a priority in Congo. Personally, I don't believe it was ever a priority, but let's agree that it was a priority at some point. But now it's no longer a priority. Why now? Because this is a great book. It is a great book. It's, of course, it has a lot of details. And I'm wondering why now the international community continue, I think it's scared of Kagame, to set a clear stand on how they keep giving him money. We know that without the international community money, the Rwandan government cannot really survive. So it's as simple as that. We're not going to give you money. Withdraw your troops from Congo, and that will save lives. Why are they scared of Kagame?
Well, I think Kagame is an intimidating personality.
To the West as well.
But yeah, I think if you meet him, the first thing he does is he plays the card, because he's done this with journalists all the time, of like, how dare you criticize me given my country's past, given what happened in the genocide? How dare you? You left us to die. You left us to be massacred. So he's very happy always to play that card when he meets journalists or Western diplomats, and I think that kind of takes them aback. So I think there's that element. I think there's, but I think more recently, I think that's been a card he's been playing for a long time. I don't think it's working quite as well as it used to. But I think more recently, the card that he's playing is I can be very useful to you. I am probably the most proactive, energetic, dynamic African president. If you want influence in Africa, and many countries do, you'll have to go through me. You can't afford to ignore me, because if you don't take me on board, I'm going to create a lot of problems for you. And then we see with England, as we were saying, with Britain rather, we see the asylum. I'll take your asylum seekers. I'll solve that problem. And then with France, we see that him saying, you're no longer popular in the Sahel, but you're worried about pulling out and Wagner going into the Sahel. So let me be the person, let me be the African leader who deals with that problem. And so I think the trick of being a long-living, long-standing African dictator, because he is that, is to make yourself very, very useful. And he is playing that game every single day, and he does it very, very well.
He's going to be a liability for them. I think that's my prediction, because at some point he's going to go, and the history is not going to look good for them, because they don't need to do anything. We're not asking them to be equal. They just need to say, we're not going to give you your money, our money, just that, our money, not your money, because they do not owe him anything. So, but they don't do that.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Jean-Paul.
Rwandan think that maybe the speeches about human rights and democracy, justice, and it's just, on the papers it looks good. It looked good, but in action, people think they don't care. The international community, they just don't care.
Well, that's not a new accusation. I mean, that's an accusation that people have been making towards us for a very long time. And I think there's always been a balance between values that the West tries to encourage, not just in Africa, around the world, especially the Americans, and realpolitik. They do, to the credit of the American government, for example, they do spend a lot of money supporting elections, and civil society often benefits from funding from the West. So it's not like it's completely cynical, but there is certainly a very, very, very strong strand of self-interest there by America, by France, by Britain, and by other countries. But as they say, people don't, countries don't have relationships, they have interests.
That's very, very, very true. And that the relationship between Kagame and the international community justify exactly that. And because of I have somebody on Zoom, Niseti Karege, for our viewers in French, because the book that we are mostly talking about is in French, is Assassin Sans Frontières. The Do Not Disturb, thank you. Do Not Disturb is really a good book, but it's considered 2 years old, but it's still a good book for those who, even I, who is, who has a background from Rwanda and RPF to an extent, I did learn a lot of some that I did not know, because I did not have probably the means to investigate as much as you did. But there are a lot of things in this book that are going to be helpful to even those who are members of RPF.
That's right.
Would you consider having your book on Netflix documentary? I picked this one because I thought it would be a great idea.
I would love to. I'd love a documentary to be made, a drama to be made. I've often pointed out to my friends that what you see happening in the world I'm describing is this murky world of spies and assassination plots and death squads and friends who become enemies and try and kill one another. People who knew each other very, very well and who then end up plotting to destroy one another. For me, this is an incredible drama. I mean, it's true, but it is also an amazing Shakespearean drama. So I would love it if Netflix were to make a feature film or a documentary. But I don't have the power to make that happen. I just have to hope that one day a Netflix director will pick up my book and have the same thought that I have.
From me, after the release of Paul Rusesabagina, do you think the West international community have learned something, or are they going to see the release of Rusesabagina as, you know what, he did what we asked, so we'll give him a pass?
I think despite at the time that he was freed, everyone talked about the role Qatar had played. My understanding is it really was American pressure that got him released. It was America, it was the congressman who kept bringing up the case. It was the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that visited him, sent staffers to visit him in prison. Eventually the White House got involved and the State Department got involved. So I think there was intense American pressure. And for me, the important thing about that case is I think people often feel that you cannot stand up to Kagame, that he is a very intimidating figure and he knows what he wants and he never changes his mind. And I must admit, I was very skeptical. I didn't believe that Rusesabagina would be freed. I was wrong. I'm very pleased for his family and for him that I was proved completely wrong. I think many people shared my view and we were all proved wrong. And I think what it shows is if you stand up to a bully, often it's you who win and the bully gives way. So I think it's actually an example that people should be following.
Well, thank you so very much, Michaela. So I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much to Annie said earlier.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, I welcome you all to East African Daily. I am Jean-Paul Turaishimie. Today I am happy to be joined by Michaela Rong. She's the author of many books. Two of them are going to be the subject of our discussion today. Those are Do Not Disturb, which is in English, and Ascenseur Sans Frontières. Ascenseur Sans Frontières. I hope I'm saying it correctly.
That's fine.
Thank you.